All right, so we're live.
We are live. I'm alive. We are all alive. Do you feel alive today, Jachym?
I feel very alive today, yes. I just came back from Hamburg. I did some street hypnosis there. Oh, what fun.
What, as a coaching?
Yeah, well, you just go out and hypnotize people on the streets. You basically offer them an opportunity to experience hypnosis, and some of them say yes, and they're in for a treat, and some of them say no, which is okay.
Oh, so cold approaching.
Sorry?
Cold approaching.
Yes, absolutely.
Nice. Can you do me now in 2 minutes?
Well, today it's your turn.
What's the weather like in where you at? Absolutely crap here.
Same in Switzerland. I had a great week in Hamburg. But I came back yesterday to Switzerland, and yesterday was okay. Today it was just raining the whole day. Yeah. Swiss weather's not the best weather.
Oh, hola, Walter.
Oh yes, it's a good thing. If someone cannot hear us, let us know. Yeah.
Charlie, yes, Charlie.
Hey, welcome, Charlie.
Yeah, it seems. How many people? There's 31 people on the meetup, but then tends to be about half of that actually turn up. Oh, I just got your email. Oh. Yeah, first, and probably quite a few people will come a few minutes later as well. But I'm happy to you can lead away, mate, whenever you want.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll get started. We'll be a little Swiss on time, right?
Okay, very on time. All right.
All right. Well, I want to welcome everyone to our webinar tonight. And some of you know Sam, some of you don't know Sam. He's a coach in London, and he's doing extremely good work, and he's an expert on self-esteem. So that's why the seminar or webinar today is called How to Build a Rock-Solid Self-Esteem, or Building a Rock-Solid Self-Esteem. So thank you for actually taking the time, Sam, and coming onto the call. And the first question really is, because not everyone knows you, is, if you can give us a little bit of your background, how you got involved into the whole coaching, self-esteem topic, and what has led you to become such an expert.
Well, thank you very much, Jachym, for having me here on this dreary Tuesday evening. No, I'm very happy to just come and share as much as possible on building up a self-esteem. And so how I got involved, I mean, really briefly, I came out of a long-term relationship quite a few years ago and realized that, yeah, I had a ton of insecurities, especially regarding women, the opposite sex. So delving into that and trying to improve on that sphere of my life, I realized that, okay, there's way more depth to this rabbit hole, and I realized just how much I cared what other people thought of me, just how much I censored myself, and how much I let society's kind of norms, like, oh, you should get a job and do this and do that because that's what you should do, right? And kind of what friends would say that would influence me. So I just wasn't the captain of my own ship at all. Very externally validated, and it was so empowering when I made that decision, that conscious decision, to kind of say, screw this. I don't know quite now how I'm going to do it at the time, but I'm going to flip the script. I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to take control, basically, over my life. So I just took a ton of action myself, like anything that scared me, anything where I felt vulnerable, anything where I thought, oh God, what are they going to think of me? Or, oh, no. I just thought, right, do it. Just push the boundaries, you know, lots of reading, lots of action taking. And once I started liberating myself and realizing how liberating it is, it just seemed like the most obvious thing to help other people to do the same thing, because I just saw that I created my own prison, basically. I literally created my own prison, like we all do. We create our own barriers. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard this all before. We create our own limits. And yeah, when you break out of them, we're like, whoa. So that got me into it, and yeah, I love helping people smash their own limits.
All right, that's cool. So you have had a personal journey in the field, right? And I admire that you actually have taken, you know, the action, because some people, they build a prison and they don't really, you know, take the action afterwards. Just to give everyone a little content, like how we lead it. If you have any questions, you know, on the right side there's a little chat box, so you can just type in, and the people who are watching it on YouTube, you can also type it in there. I will check it from time to time, and of course we'll have also a formal question and answer session maybe at the end, or you can just barge in and ask anything you want. So because you've taken such a personal journey, I think you have also a different perspective than other coaches, because some coaches, you know, they take the coaching courses, right, but they have not had the personal development in the field itself, and that's what I think qualifies you really to speak about, because you know it is not always easy to break out of the prison, right? So if I'm now a person who knows, oh, I'm a little insecure and I want to build this rock solid self-esteem, what are the top 3 things that you would recommend to that person?
Okay, that's a good question. So the first thing that is coming to mind is get more clarity on who the hell you are. And I'll try and explain in a bit more practical terms. But get clarity, get a clearer picture of who you are and what's important to you as a person, not necessarily the values that you may have taken on from other people. But work out what are your foundational principles, what are your core values, what's your inner constitution. Now I use the term, you know, what does your higher self look like? So there's various ways of saying it depending on what book you read or what vocabulary you prefer to use. But in a sense, get crystal clear on what is important to you here, and then that should be the foundation for every single action that you do. Every single action that you do should come down and be based on this foundation. The thing is, what happens is a lot of us grow up and we don't get taught about self-esteem or any of these things, or appreciating ourselves or accepting or forgiving or anything like that a lot of the time. So we just forget, we don't really know who we are. We've taken other people's values on and we're just kind of getting tossed around. We've been programmed to seek approval externally. And so the second thing I'd say, tying in with getting clear on what your foundational constitution is that makes who you are, I would say start validating yourself through showing integrity to yourself rather than looking for it, you know, from your boss or your girlfriend or boyfriend or friend. Start validating yourself through your integrity. And to have integrity, you need to know who you are. You need to know what's important to you. So once you have that foundational block, then you know you can start acting in line with that. And then as you build up that integrity, your self-esteem improves. Is the camera all right, by the way? Because it's gone.
Yeah,
good.
I'm just muting myself when you talk, so it's not always, you know, switching back and forth. So there's a little bit more attention on you. No pressure.
Oh,
But before you move on to the third step, the third principle, basically, how do you actually get to know what is really you? What is the core value of you? It makes a lot of sense what you're saying, but how do you actually get to there? Like, oh yes, that's what I am. That's what I want to be. Or, you know, how do you do that?
Very, very good question as well. So it's not necessarily easy, depending on how much smog we've accumulated through our conditioning and upbringing. It's maybe not going to be the easiest task. And to be honest, from my experience, it's not just the, right, I've worked that one out, boom. It's not like a flick of the switch kind of process. It's more of a chipping away process. So it's a thing that you want to keep doing, and myself, I still keep doing to this day. So it's about internally reflecting as much as possible. It's about getting a diary and start jotting down things. A key ingredient is silence. A key ingredient is silence. Start getting used to silence. Go and spend a weekend just you away from all the hustle and bustle of your life, and just think, right, for this weekend I'm going to just think about, okay, what's important to me? What do I like? What feels good for me? Because when you're away from all those distractions and all maybe the pressures of other people, that is where the gold comes. That's where more clarity comes about who you are. Hence why when a lot of people go traveling, they say, oh, well, I found myself traveling, you know, because they're away from all those distractions in their mind.
Okay, so when you say silence and traveling, I don't know if it's the same thing. Like for me, silence more is like meditation. So you actually go and meditate for a weekend, for example. But if you travel, you're just in so many different contexts and so many different cultures that the social conditioning that you've received in your context right now doesn't apply if you go to Bangkok, for example, right? So
Yeah.
is there a difference between like having silence and actually just being put into different contexts and having to interact in those contexts?
I'd say there's value in both of them. In fact, I mean, ultimately, just sitting in silence is going to be probably more beneficial. But at the same time, you can get a lot of insight by putting yourself in a new scenario, in a new country, doing a new thing. If you take your awareness with you, if you're not just doing it blindly like but if you take your awareness with you, then when you're interacting with that group of those new people you've just met, you can notice, oh, I felt a bit scared there, or I tried to be really nice there and tried to please that person too much. Why might that be? So you can use almost these new surroundings and new travels as kind of experiment grounds, as I call them, just to kind of to observe your behavior, and then kind of do a little psychoanalysis on yourself to get more clarity about maybe some of your blocks or insecurities.
Okay, okay. So what do you have like some kind of practical exercise that people can do on a daily basis or even now that will give them a little bit more clarity or get them started on this path of finding out who they are?
Yeah. So I would say right now then, let's take 2 minutes of silence, and if you've got a pen and paper there or laptop or whatever, just ask yourself, what matters to me most in life? Just ask yourself that question now. What matters to me most in life? Another question you can ask is, how would the best version of myself act or be? How would the best version of myself act or be? And what matters to me most in life? Now, take those two questions. Ask yourself the first one, then pause for like 15-20 seconds. Don't try and think of the response, and then just let your pen naturally write out whatever comes.
Okay, so I've written the first question in the chat box. What matters to me most in life? What was the second one?
How would the best version of myself act or be? Yeah.
Okay, so let's do that then. 2 minutes, right?
Okay, 2 minutes, guys. Do it. We can see some of your videos. Yeah, you may be muted and blurred, but we can see.
We're gonna check it.
Charlie, yeah, I can see you chilling there. Can't see Walter. you don't have any sound. We've blocked you out because we know you just keep chatting away. So no, everyone's muted. But I think you can unmute them, can't you, Jachym?
I can unmute him. Yes, if someone wants to ask a question.
Yeah, if there's like, well, should we wait to the end, like last time?
Sure. Yeah.
So at the end, if anyone's got any questions, then we welcome them. We welcome the questions.
We set up so they can do the.
You can blabber away all you want, Charlie. Yeah. So with these questions, actually, Jachym, you said the same thing in the webinar we did. The questions you ask yourself are extremely important. So these two questions are powerful, they're profound, and when you ask yourself these kind of questions, it's not about, as I said before, thinking of like the correct response. It's about asking yourself, what matters to me most in life? And it's that pause, it's that 20-second, 30-second pause where you're almost waiting for the answer to come rather than trying to force it, if that makes sense.
Yes, that makes sense.
And the more, it's not like you're necessarily going to get all the answers straight away, but through practice, through practice of being in silence, being comfortable with yourself, putting space between you and your thoughts, like through practice, you get a lot more clarity. But it may be really not clear at the beginning. That really may be the case. I know for myself, when I first thought about my values, as I used to call them. Now I just call it really, the highest version of myself, but same thing. But they've come a long way over the last few years, just through regular practice and regular reflection.
That makes sense, yeah. So I think 2 minutes. That's about what we have done now. If you have not finished exercise, then it should take a little longer. And of course, I recommend, because I've done such exercise too, not necessarily this one, but I realized more you just sit down and take time to ask those questions again and again. You get different and higher quality answers. So I definitely recommend people to do it again, for example, tomorrow or tonight after the call and see what happens. So that's just from my side, that questions that you repeat and you actually want to have a good answer. That's the way to go. Keep bugging yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. So the second step was, build this integrity, right? So you start to figure out, what your core values are and who you are, and during that process, you start to act on those values. So okay, I am a person who wants to express itself freely in social interactions, for example. But maybe you're at the point where you're like, I'm a little scared, It's not that easy to just express myself and walk over to this person, for example, give a compliment or ask some questions here. There might be some limitations going on. How do you build that? How do you go from knowing your core values, even if it's just at the beginning, how do you actually start to have this integrity and you're not afraid of, oh my God, I'm going to be judged or I'm going to be put into prison if I go, just all the weird thoughts that come to mind and that keep you in the prison.
Yeah, no worries. So there, I think you're touching on the value of showing vulnerability or being authentic, I guess, or showing courage. I guess it could be either one of those. So what comes to mind is baby steps, baby steps. Really think about what is the lowest hanging fruit, that you can take. It's just going to get you one little step closer. Because what happens is a lot of people come into this thinking, yeah, I want to improve myself and blah, 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 and they can get really overwhelmed by all the apparent weaknesses and everything. So don't get overwhelmed. Remember, it's just a journey we're all on, and I don't think it ever ends, personally. So look at it in the big grand context of things. You're just at a point in your journey, okay?
Yeah, that makes sense. Also, it seems that you're touching on the concept of training for success and not training for failure, right? Because if you take, like if you go to the gym and you always train for failure, you're teaching your brain to fail. And I mean, everyone who goes to the gym and has taken some classes in this direction, it doesn't make sense to go every time for failure. Yes, sometimes it does make sense, but not every time. So is that something that you also do? You know, you as you said, you go for the low-hanging fruit and you build on this success. Is that something you understand correctly?
Very, very important for yourself, especially when you're coming from a lower and more fragile place. It's very important. The small wins are just so crucial at the early stages. And what I do with a lot of clients when we go out and do more practical stuff, every single time they take action, no matter how the result goes, even if it goes horrendously in someone's perspective, every single time it is a win. And I'll even anchor this with, you know, a gesture we do, or just a high five, or just like, you know, verbally just saying win, positive reference point. So you have to start training yourself to, yeah, every single time you take a little bit of action, even if you fail, let's say on the external front, you took action, and that is what counts. So you have to validate yourself for taking action, because that is showing integrity to yourself. It doesn't matter whether you do the thing well or not. So in terms of, yeah, small baby steps, if it is about, you know, expressing yourself or being vulnerable, just think about, right, what's like a little thing, a little small thing I can do just to push myself and be like, ugh. So it may be easier with doing it with some friends or some family members, someone perhaps you're more comfortable with. I know, you know, for example, a client of mine, a small step, but still was very significant, because they're all significant. All the steps are significant in building. But a small step was to put his background of his computer as some yoga, as some people doing yoga, because he had some bit of insecurity about, you know, a bloke doing yoga, right? And which, you know, understandable. So for him, just like showing integrity to himself and being, you know, taking a small step was just putting that background, and that was very significant. You know, a lot of us might think, oh, no big deal. That was really significant. Another client, he used to watch Doctors, a program called Doctors, and again, he had a little bit of shame about watching that, because again, a lot of people might think, oh, why is that shameful? But for him, he had some shame, so it was not hiding it on the tube. It was putting it so everyone could see the screen. If they looked, okay, he's watching Doctors. So it's just little things like that, little things where you have a little funny feeling in your stomach, where you might be being judged. Start building up the small wins, and you do one of those a day, like, it's going to be massive. You're going to see massive improvements in actually not too long a time at all.
Okay, that makes sense. But I'm just wondering if, you know, if I'm putting myself into the shoes, I'm like, how do I figure out what a small win will be for me? You know, it's like, I might be like, no, that's too small. You know, some people they have this, like, you know, something inside of them, and like, you know, I have to push myself harder and stuff, and then they go out and they fail. So how would you go about at the beginning, especially, to figure out what is actually a small step for you? Are there some questions you ask yourself? Or?
Yeah, I would say then, if you're not sure where to start, then you know, wake up tomorrow and say, right, today my task is to be aware of, as much as possible, of every single time I censor myself. Every single time I censor myself in some shape or form, whether it's avoiding the neighbor opposite you, like not saying hello to the bus driver, you know, any little thing, just be aware, just think, all right, I'm just going to be aware of today, like how often, and make sure that you do it in a very non-judgmental way. That's very, very important. It's not about you using that for more fuel to go, oh, look, see, my self-esteem should be even lower because I'm doing this, this, and this. No. This is you taking action in itself, just by you going, right, I'm going to be aware of how much I censor myself. That should be commended as a step forward, as evidence for why you have a higher self-esteem, because you're taking action, you're showing integrity to yourself. So yeah, does that help?
Yeah, that makes sense. So basically, you find out, you start to ask those questions of who you are, and you find those core values, and then I guess one of the steps you can take is afterwards actually look at how you're leading your life, with self-awareness, and see where you are censoring yourself, where you're basically backing down, where you kind of want to go over there and talk to this person, but you're like, no. Right, that would be like censorship, or like, I'm going to take the back door because someone's outside there and I don't know them, right? And this kind of self-awareness, is that what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, definitely, mate. Definitely. You wanna get as much clarity as possible, and it will come with time, of what is your foundational values, right, or the highest version of yourself. You in your best form, you in your best potential, whatever you want to call it, or you without all the crap that you've accumulated. What does that look like? And you already have a much better idea than you think you do if you actually sit and reflect on it and clear your mind. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't know. And the people who actually think and take time out, they're like, oh God, I didn't realize. But so it really works. And then what you want to do is you want to see with a mirror, reflect your current reality, that you're living, and see how much of that reflects back on your highest self, on your core values, on your foundational principles. Where is there incongruency? So if you shine a mirror against the foundational principles, how much of that just smoothly matches up to your current reality? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So do you do this with like a notebook? Like you actually write down, okay, this is like my life right now, and these are my core values, and then you do it, or do you just do it in your head, or what are your methods?
So I'd recommend with a notebook, going through some key principles that are important to you. So for example, I'll give an example. I'll give an example. For example, one of my key principles is love. Okay, and by the way, it's going to be very subjective as well, in a sense. Like the language that I might use for love might be completely different for someone else. So for me personally, that means that I'm showing compassion. I'm looking to forgive people rather than hold resentment. I'm looking to do kindness without thinking, right, what's in it for me? And then I could go even more specific to be like, I'm calling up my family members on a regular basis. I'm giving to charity, let's say once a week. You can go really specific with it, and then from that I can see, right, which bit of that doesn't match up with my current reality, and I can go, do you know what? I still haven't forgiven my brother for what he did 2 years ago, or do you know what? I haven't. The last time I gave to a homeless person was like 5 years ago. So you can start to see how there's some gaps, as it were, and then that can give you clues as to what action you need to take to show more integrity to yourself.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. You mentioned one important part, and that is, how are you actually aware of yourself? Because I used to have like this negative self-talk. It's like, oh my God, you just fucked yourself over again, or something like that, which is not very useful if you're very harsh to yourself. So how do you go about that? This self-acceptance, or this kind of, I heard the term benign attention, which I find very, very fitting.
What's that?
Benign attention.
Denying attention.
Benign attention.
Benign.
Yeah, it's benign attention.
Okay.
Which is basically having this attention, but it's non-judgmental. It's like more of awareness that takes whatever is there, but you're not like, oh my God, I'm screwing myself over. But it's also not an attention that is just like, oh, everything is just perfect. It's just what is actually there, what is actually happening. But how do you develop this kind of attention? How do you get out of this, oh, I'm worthless and I can't ever do this and I will never ever have this self-esteem, and yada yada?
It's a very good question. Oh, you're asking some good questions today, Jachym. Okay, so a few things are firing off. A few of my neurons are firing off here. Okay. There's two things I want to touch on. So the first thing is building on what you said about having that type of awareness, that non-judgmental awareness. So how you can develop that more is through the practice of becoming the observer of your thoughts. So yeah, you could say meditation, let's say, but if you don't like the sound of that word, you don't have to use it. It's really in the practical sense, spend 5-10 minutes a day just sitting and literally just watching the thoughts that come in. And the more you practice just literally watching, it's nothing mystical or crazy, just watching the thoughts that come in, the more that you watch them, the less identified you become with your mind, with the thoughts. So the first thing would just be to practice watching your thoughts. So a lot of people won't even have had this experience. So yeah, you can say something.
Yeah. I think also, again, there, the principle applies of not necessarily training for failure, right? So would you suggest 5 minutes? I think that's perfect. For some people, it might be even shorter, but actually training, to be aware and not going for failure, especially with thoughts. I'm a long-term meditator, so I know at the beginning you get just sucked in, and you're like, oh, time is over. Oops, an hour just passed. Now it's just like somewhere in dreamland, thinking about things, and I really have not meditated in the sense of what many people say is meditation. So that's why what I also advise for clients, and maybe you do too, is that you're mindful of your breath. So you do like a count. You count your breathing, and if you start to stray away, for example, at number 5 or number 10, then you just take 2 numbers off. So you go for 8 or just 3, and that's it. And then you just train success after success after success, so your brain just gets, that's what he wants, and not, because sometimes you screw yourself over by, oh my God, now I was away, I'm never gonna get this.
Yeah.
Watching my thoughts, like, oh my God. So that's what really helped me to figure out, go for successes again.
Yeah, I like that with the breath. Yeah, so the key thing is to not identify with your thoughts, to stop identifying and stop taking every thought you have as the gospel. Stop taking every thought you have as the truth. Realize on a profound level, a thought is a thought.
Yes.
Yeah, it sounds really simple, but a thought is a thought, and a thought you have, oh, I'm rubbish, I'm useless, can have just as much weight as, oh, I fancy a cheeseburger later, or I wonder what's on TV. A thought is a thought, and it's only when we attach to them emotionally, we attach and take that as the truth. Right, that becomes our reality. We take that on, and then we see the world through that lens. So people building up their self-esteem want to start not identifying as much with the thoughts. Start almost observing them like a scientist and being like curious, like, oh, interesting. Almost being curious of the roots as well. I wonder where that might have come from. Try and be a bit more, curious about it. The other thing I would say as well, when it comes to, you mentioned acceptance, self-acceptance. So that is huge. That is a huge part of building up the self-esteem. You can't have a good self-esteem if there's some form of non-acceptance. You have to fully accept every single imperfection that you have.
Okay, what does that mean exactly, self-acceptance? Like, how do you do that?
Good question. I don't know. So, self-acceptance. It is what it is. It is what it says on the tin. It's about looking at your past and accepting that you are not your past. That X or Y happened in the past, of course, fine, but that does not equate to who you are as a being. So one exercise you can do, which in fact will stop again 2 minutes now, with your pen and papers, just to write down anything that you think you can still forgive yourself for. Anything that you can still forgive yourself for. So any mistakes or failures that still ruminate in your mind, anything that you could still forgive yourself for. This is a very powerful exercise to do. So let's give the guys 2 minutes.
All right, perfect. I'm also going to put it into the chat box in case anyone missed it.
Do it.
You basically said, what can you forgive yourself for, right?
Yeah, what can you still forgive yourself for? What stuff are you still holding against yourself? And again, you're not necessarily going to just get this now in 2 minutes. This, again, the more silence and reflection you bring to these kind of questions, the better clarity you're going to get. Yeah. So yeah, acceptance is, it's cleaning up. It's cleaning up. It's going through all the doors in your mind and giving it a good spring clean. And accepting, it doesn't mean you have to like or feel enthusiastic or positive about everything that's happened in your life. It doesn't mean that. It just means that on some level there's an acceptance. There's just an acceptance of what is. Because the more you resist reality, the more you resist what has been or what is, then that's where tension, frustration, anxiety, bad feelings arise.
Yeah, okay. Now, I know acceptance is a huge part, as I'm coaching clients, it is always a part in, acceptance is always a part of a session, not always of a session, but, of a work we do together. I've seen people struggle sometimes really hard with certain topics. Now I know with certain topics, maybe it's just best to just go see a coach because it might just sort it out much quicker. But are there certain guidelines of that you can do to also sort out bigger issues that you're like, I just can't forgive myself for it, because maybe someone died because of it.
So what's the question? Is there?
The question is if there's any tool that you would advise people if they still want to do it by themselves and not necessarily just go and see a coach, which I would probably recommend if it's a bigger thing. If there are any tools that you...
Any tools? Well, the tool that I use with my clients is, which I highly recommend, is to write yourself a forgiveness letter. Write yourself a forgiveness letter. That's very, very powerful.
Oh, that's really cool. How does that work? Like, you address it to yourself, so you're like, oh, dear Jachym, or dear Sam, or something like that?
Yeah. And you want to, the key principles you've got to start showing to yourself more are understanding and empathy. So the same sort of thing, right? You've got to empathize with yourself and show understanding that whatever happened, whatever you did that wasn't good enough or whatever, would have been coming from a place of fear or just naivety or just not necessarily from a bad place. So it's starting to treat yourself in the same way that you treat your best friends, or if you've got children, perhaps. I mean, this might not be the case for everyone. How you treat your child. Would you scold them and say da 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 da, or would you show some understanding and say, okay, I know what you did there wasn't quite good. We want to correct that, let's say, or we want to do that because that's going to be better for you and for everyone. There's no need to hold a grudge against yourself, but you can learn for next time. It's that sort of approach. That makes sense. You want to start showing that to yourself, realizing on a deep level that we are human, we make mistakes, a lot of mistakes, and fully embracing all your imperfections. So put that all into a letter. speak to yourself perhaps as if you are, 10, 15 years old again, and address it to you. As whenever you made all these mistakes or whenever you weren't good enough, address it back to that and go, I forgive you. Do you know what? You were scared, Sam, when you were 12 and you were crap at school. I understand it's because you didn't realize the importance of education and you wanted to appear cool with your friends, and I understand that. I know that you didn't have the mind that you have now. Do you see what I mean?
Yes, I see. Yeah, absolutely.
Doing that like empathy, as if that forgiveness, that compassion that a lot of people will be able to show to their family and friends, but can't show to themselves.
Okay, so how does the self-acceptance fit into? So we have the finding the core of yourself, which is a journey, of course, and then also staying congruent with those values, right? Which one step to actually achieving that might be just being aware of your surroundings, how you're acting in your daily life. By the way, correct me if I'm saying anything wrong. I'm just trying to recap so everyone gets the benefit of having also a little more condensed. And then taking baby steps to actually taking action in certain directions, which might just be, as you said, putting a background on your computer with a man doing yoga, right? And then the whole concept of accepting, where does it fit into it, right?
I mean, it's just part of. There's a good quote from I always forget his name, but a self-esteem guru guy, and talking about self-acceptance, and this is how it fits into self-esteem. And that he says, you can never leave a place that you've never been to. You can never leave a place that you've never been to.
Okay, you can never leave a place you've never been to.
If you want to build up that self-esteem, that integrity with yourself, you've got to go back and take all this. It's the self-acceptance. I call it like the spring cleaning process. It's making sure the garden is nice and clean for you then to start planting some new flowers on with your action steps, with your new actions which are in line with yourself, which should come from a place of integrity. So it's like that spring cleaning that you need to do to move forward.
Okay. So basically, is this part of the being having the integrity to be able to actually be and have this integrity? You have to clear out the stuff from the past. So you are not basically limiting yourself by your past, certain triggers that trigger you off and have a certain response, and maybe anxieties that are overwhelming, that are part of this spring cleaning, right? Of asking and accepting.
Yeah, I mean, you can keep any action is great, even if I think the spring cleaning can just be an ongoing process as well. At the same time of taking action, they complement each other. But yeah, the more that you've got that clean and forgiving nature with yourself, then you can start building on self-appreciation. That's the next step. So it's really self-awareness is what we talked about first of all. Getting an idea of who am I, what is important to me, where do I even need to be aiming for to start building my self-esteem, what actions do I need to start doing to build up my self-esteem, and then it's self-accepting, realizing, okay, I still hold a lot of crap against myself. This isn't serving me anymore. I forgive myself. I let go of all this stuff. One thing I was going to say is turn all your failures, right, into blessings. This is another great exercise I was meaning to tell you, the self-acceptance. Turn all your failures into blessings. So, even the most horrific things, I'm sure you can turn into blessings. So even if it's like, I crashed a car and, my friend went to hospital for it, and people could still hold that against themselves as being a bad person. But hey, you didn't mean to do that on purpose. You acted because you were trying to be cool or whatever. But that is a blessing now, because you are never ever gonna, take life for granted, perhaps, or it's really made you appreciate that friendship. Do you see what I mean? So you can turn actually the failures into blessings.
Yes. Okay, so that's another part of the self-acceptance, right?
Yeah.
So where you mentioned self-appreciation, where's the difference to self-acceptance? Is it like another step forward, or like how's it?
Yeah, I'd say that most often clients come in, and the first goal is self-acceptance, and just starting to get a roadmap of, as I said, their values, their foundational principles, because the more they start taking action in line with that, then naturally their self-esteem just starts boosting up, and it's just amazing. But once that starts going and the momentum comes, then very quickly you can start even going into fifth gear, let's say, and which is where self-appreciation can come in. So you can actually go from sort of negative to neutral, self-acceptance, to then positive. And again, this is very simple, very easy to understand. It is appreciating yourself. So it's in terms of practically how you can do this, it's becoming aware of your strengths, it's celebrating your successes, celebrating all the good things that you do, all the joy you bring to other people. So actually, let's do it.
Celebrating. That's a very important thing. You know, you've all this great thing coming out. I need to slow you down real quick.
All right, sorry.
Celebrating. What do you mean by that? By celebrating your strengths, for example, or your successes? Like, does it mean to go out and party, or is it just to hold in and take a breath and you're like, yes, I did this. Good.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, it's good that you pick me up on that, because celebrating could be. Yeah, you could view that in a few different ways. A better word is probably just acknowledging. It's just acknowledging. Just taking a moment to acknowledge. When you've got a low self-esteem, and you've got a negative thought pattern that's just fulfilling that prophecy of, well, I'm not worthy, and then it's just taking more evidence from the world every single day to support that pattern. What's happening is that while it's focusing on all the negative stuff to support that reality, it's ignoring all the positive stuff that every single person is doing, but because it doesn't fit in with that reality, it's literally just getting ignored. So it's just not there. It just doesn't exist for that person. So it's about consciously flipping the script to the self-appreciation mode, which doesn't mean you have to go around being like, yeah, I'm the best at everything. Yeah. It's just about quietly acknowledging, just to yourself even, hey, today, do you know what? I did this, I did that. It's starting to focus on the little things, the small things. It's building up, noticing. It's literally just noticing, just acknowledging the small wins every single day. So these small wins could be really small. It could just be, oh, I got to work on time, or, you know, I had a nice chat with my secretary, or, you know, I think I made my mate's day when I went round and had a beer with him or her or whatever. Like little small wins that previously would have just gone unnoticed, that wouldn't have actually been registered.
Okay, so again, do you like hold like a notebook at the end of the day? You just sit down. You're like, okay, what did I what went well? What did I do well? What can I celebrate? Or is it during the moment? Because, you know, sometimes you just forget. You're like, you're busy with the day, and you go into the habit of, like, you know, going the way of your usual behavior, which hasn't caused you necessarily happiness so far. So to break out of that cycle, do you hold like a little booklet at the end of the day?
You're on the money there, mate. You're on the money. Yeah. Get yourself a success log, or a gratitude journal, and just a little diary, and spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes even at the end of the day before you go to bed. Just do it up, link it on, like something you said last time about piggybacking habits together. So piggyback it, connect it with another habit that you already do, like brushing your teeth. You know, after you brush your teeth, you do your 5 minutes in your success log, and it's lit. This is a task I give to all my clients, and it really, I've seen now through numerous times the effect it has, the momentum it builds in the client's minds of reprogramming that negativity to positivity. Literally just 3 things a day as a minimum, 3 little mini successes that give you new evidence to form your new reality of you know, proof as to why you are worthy of being in this world. And honestly, you pick up 3 a day in a week, what, it's 21, a month, whatever, 84. Think about, after a few months, how many wins you're going to have consciously picked up that before would have just gone completely over the radar. So as a little exercise now, do you have any questions on that before I give a little exercise?
No, let's do the exercise. I think that's a good idea.
So exercise now with your notepads. I'd like you to just spend 2 minutes writing down everything, anything that you've done well, or anything that's gone well for you just generally in your success log that's gone well today. And what will probably happen is...
Just today? Or
just today, yeah.
In general?
Well, that's another exercise to do in itself,
okay.
is to write down everything that you've done well in your whole life. So a success log, that's another great exercise to do.
Today, it's just today, right?
Just do today.
Yeah.
And what will happen is, if you're very negative, you'll find a lot of resistance, and your mind will be like, no, there's nothing, we've done nothing. So it's going to be a little bit difficult at the start to find the positives, but they are there. They are there. They just need to be found, and they need to put in a little bit of work at the beginning.
Okay, so 2 minutes for that exercise. Perfect.
Yeah, it's a very, very powerful exercise to do.
You're sharing a lot of very valuable content. I hope everyone's listening, taking notes.
Oh,
a lot of these things you can really transfer to your life and maintain it to change it. So absolutely take this advice from Sam.
Cheers, mate. Yeah, no, I still have my own gratitude and success log myself, which I still do entries like at least a couple of times a month. So yeah, I remember it's one of the first things I started doing, actually. Really, really powerful. And for those of you who are a bit skeptical about it, try it. Try it for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Put a date on it. At least 2 weeks. Just go, all right. I'll try it for 14 days, for 21 days, and then make a judgment about it, just to see if there's any difference.
Okay, good. All right, maybe we can move on. The next point you have mentioned, well, you actually haven't mentioned here, but it is mentioned in the meetup. It's self-maintenance. What are your thoughts, or what do you mean by self-maintenance?
Maintenance, yeah. This one, it just means maintenance. It just means looking after. It's very, very obvious. Again, it's just looking after your mind and body as much as possible, doing nice things for yourself, treating yourself. Again, if you're not looking after your body and your mind and wearing yourself out, again, it's very common sense, but that's not going to help your self-esteem. The more that you actually treat your body and mind with such care and go, right, this is a beautiful gift I have, I'm going to take care of it, that is going to start affirming your self-esteem. So very simply, it's just thinking about your diet, about your exercise. It's thinking about your sociability as well. How much are you staying inside as a recluse? How much are you actually mixing out with friends? It's also talking about self-amusement as well, relaxing, being a kid, having a balance. So if you work all the time, always like looking to please other people, it's about actually stepping back and going, how can I please myself? How can I treat myself? How can I be a little kid again? How can I be creative? How can I be fun? It's those kind of things. So yeah, for you guys listening, I'd say some questions could be, what's one way that I could change my diet or exercise regime to look after myself better? And make a list of any activities that you want to, you know, any activities that you enjoy for you, you know. I was with a client recently, and we made one of her action steps was to make her own love affair list, a love affair with herself. Right? She's building up her own inner strength and confidence, and building up, doing activities just for her, just for her. So create your own, yeah, I'll write here, you know, create your own love affair list. Take yourself on a love affair. What stuff do you love to do? What stuff do you think, oh no, I shouldn't really do that for me? And it might be hard at the beginning. If your thought pattern is, you know, I'm not good enough, blah, 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 you're going to find some resistance. It's going to be uncomfortable. You might even feel some guilt. That is normal. That's fine. That's just that mind pattern just reacting to it. So try and push past that initially and think, no, it's right. I deserve to actually look after myself, treat myself, do things that make me happy. Be a little kid. A great way is just to think, what things do you love doing that are really creative and a bit silly, perhaps, you know, that maybe you did years ago, but you just haven't done for ages. Starting doing things that bring out that child inside of you is a great way to build up your self-esteem.
Okay, yeah, that's very, very powerful. Like, I think it's very useful for a lot of people because we get easily sucked into work and, you know, many things that you have to take care of. So I think to actually have a love affair list is very useful for many people out there, that you actually appreciate, you know, take time for yourself, because you will, you know, it will change your life in any area, you know, how you interact with your kids, your partner, your work, if you actually have taken care of yourself also. So very, very powerful exercise. Very good. So just to recap again, we had the first building block is finding your core values. Second building blocks being, you know, having the integrity, which can have the different steps of actually just being aware, you know, of what is going on in your daily life. Where are you not doing where are you incongruent with your core values? And, you know, having this notebook where you write down, hey, you know, this is my life, how I lead it currently, and those are my core values, and I see the mismatches. But have it with a attention that is not like, oh my God, I'm going to beat myself about it, but actually, you know, noticing it, right, acknowledging it, and then having baby steps of saying, okay, I will change now something that I can have a success. Maybe just go talk to the neighbor, for example. And if that's too big, just saying maybe hi from 10 meters away, right? And the whole meditation part, I think, is an entire thing that goes with everything. You know, the silence, finding goes with, I guess, with the core values. You know, being silent, being mindful of yourself, and then the entire thing with accepting yourself, going back into the past, and writing yourself this letter, you know, I forgive you for whatever that's happened there, and you understand, right? You understand why it happened this way, and also actually changing the failures. Try to see, goes into the reframe thing, right? It's such a bad thing, and my life is destroyed. You know, try to see, okay, what's actually the good thing about it, right? And then have also the success journal. So with this, which is, I've done this many things good, maybe just very small things, but those are a very good thing. And then the love journal. Yeah, did I miss anything?
Hey, that was a beautiful summary. Very good memory you've got there.
Yeah, well, when you're working with clients, you better pay attention to what they're saying. Okay, that's very good. We're moving right along, right? And one of the, I think, very important topics, and I think it ties in with everything we've done right now, is showing vulnerability, right? Because expressing yourself, you know, living your core values, might be that you also show that you're vulnerable, because you're showing your true self, right? You're living yourself. So what can you say about this? How can you learn to show actually vulnerability? Because I know some people, they're like, man, I just can't do it. I'd rather go the other way and, you know, be like, oh, I know it all, than actually be vulnerable. So what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I guess we've touched on that a little bit with, putting the yoga thing on your laptop or things like that, taking small steps to do the things that where normally you'd censor yourself. You think, no, I'm gonna show a little bit of me. Um, in terms of starting off, I would say start being honest with yourself first and foremost. Start being vulnerable with yourself. So start thinking, who am I kidding here? Start thinking, what am I trying to cover up, even to myself? So again, that would just be going to a quiet place and asking, what are my real insecurities here? You've got to be honest with yourself first before you can then show them to others. One thing you can do is to think about what aspects of yourself do you hide from your friends and family. Start with your friends and family and think, what interests of mine do I not share with them? So for those of you interested in self-development, one thing for me that I found very liberating was I used to have a ton of self-development books, but I'd be really embarrassed to show them to my university flatmates. So one thing, when I was masterminding with an inspirational friend of mine, and we kind of would set each other action steps to do, and my one for that week was to go and read one of my personal development books in the living room. So, people would see the book and go, what? Why are you reading that book? So start thinking about all the interests and opinions on things, all the classes you go to, perhaps the less conventional classes or the less conventional books you read, and start sharing that with other people. Start sharing that with your friends and family. That's a very good thing to do to show vulnerability.
Yeah, and also with, as you said, with yourself first. So, like if you do it with yourself first, what would that be? Is that going into the self-acceptance, self-appreciation part? Is that something that goes into this topic, or is it different?
Yeah, I think vulnerability is almost like a layer, isn't it? Just going through all of them. It's all very vulnerable process. But I would just say go into a bit of silence and ask yourself. I'll write the question: what are my insecurities? What am I insecure about? What things do I hide? And try and get specific as possible.
Okay, should we give them like again two minutes just to get your brain a little bit more engaged with the questions, and then we'll move on?
Good idea, mein Freund.
Right. All right. So guys, take 2 minutes, and then we'll move on to the next topic.
On a bit of a deeper level with vulnerability, when people are scared of being vulnerable, that implies obviously there's something can get hurt, right? And the only thing that in reality is ever going to get hurt, this is very profound when I realize this, but the only thing in reality that's going to get hurt or tarnished is your self-image, is the image. So Jachym, if if you are scared about doing something because it's going to make you vulnerable, in reality, your actual being, Jachym, you know, your blood, flesh, heart, spirit, whatever your belief is, whatever, right? That's not actually the real thing that's being vulnerable. When you go and speak to those group of people or whatever, it's that image of Jachym that might get judged or laughed at, if that makes sense. But because a lot of us are so identified with that image as us, right? Because we
Yeah, the image in our head, right?
Say again?
The self-image we have in our head, like, you know, exactly. X, Y, Z, or the image other people project on us. You know, some people are like, oh, you're this kind of person, right?
Exactly. So it's actually, we're scared of that being vulnerable, which is actually just an illusion. Now this is getting, you know, more profound here, but yeah, it's profound. Because
Okay,
when
yeah,
you look at
I absolutely agree.
You know, they don't even have the concept of being vulnerable half the time. They're sort of just going up to whoever, just expressing themselves left, right, and centre. Oh, look, I like this, Daddy. Oh, what's that? You know, they just ask, they just express. They express their sadness, their anger, their happiness. They just let it flow, right? Life just flows through them, right? The concept of judgment, of rejection, of vulnerability is not actually yet ingrained in their minds, right? And as they start to grow up, they start building, creating that image in their minds of who they are, and then they become so identified with that, they forget that they're always going to be fine. But they're caught in the illusion so strongly that then they're like, shit, we've got to protect this, we've got to protect this, we've got to protect this, oh my god, oh my god. And it's all so flimsy by nature just because it isn't even real that no wonder people get all this fear that does feel so real, because it is kind of real.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, with the whole vulnerability, it also goes into the topic of, you know, facing your fears, developing courage. What kind of exercises would you actually give to people to develop courage? Besides, you know, taking baby steps, what kind of exercise would you add to build the courage to face your fear? What would you recommend?
Okay, so again, these are just some simple questions you ask yourself. What are all the things that scare me? Also, a good thing to do is to write yourself a bucket list. So these are 2 activities you can do, and then the more you literally just go through ticking off that list, this is what I did personally a lot, and the more you do that, you affirm to yourself, you get real life evidence from the world. I just did that. I just did X or Y. I just went and spoke to that person. I just did a bungee jump. I just held a spider. I just you know, did public speaking, or I just played a song in front of my friends. It doesn't matter what the activity is. That's not important. The important thing is that it just pushes you a little bit, so you make it you know, a lifelong habit of taking the harder route, and your self-esteem will keep growing because you're giving yourself real life evidence that you're awesome. You're giving yourself real life evidence that you're doing shit. You know, you're creating stuff. You're making stuff happen. You're pushing your comfort zone.
Yeah, that's very good. Also, what I have experienced is that if you are afraid of a situation, just go into the situation without having to do anything, and just being with the fear. You know, just recognizing, okay, it's right there, and breathing. That really helps to develop the courage, because you're not doing the normal response, which is like, I see, I go, you know, get the fuck out of here as quickly as possible. Just staying there for a little bit and breathing really helps to develop this habit of facing fear and developing courage.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. It's very powerful. And even if you get too scared and don't take action, even just the action of being aware of your fear, being more aware of your fear, more present of your fear rather than just being sucked in, that in itself is evidence of why you're awesome. That in itself is progress, because that takes a lot of practice to be able to see your fear and not let that fear just take over you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just to add to that, one really powerful technique, which I've just discovered fairly recently, which I've used for myself and for clients, is when you feel the fear, so think of something now, you guys watching this, an activity when you know, you feel fear, whether it's talking to people, talking to your boss, just any activity, and start to visualize it now. And you may visualize it to the extent where you even feel a bit of fear in your body. And what you want to do is, when that fear comes, maybe often it's in the chest, sometimes in the stomach, it depends on the person, but when that fear comes, although this will seem counterintuitive, you want to actually say to your fear, whether you say it verbally or in your mind, okay, let's ramp this up a bit. Let's increase this. Let's turn this up. And that sounds crazy, right? But by actually going, yeah, okay, I acknowledge this weird feeling in my chest, this uncomfortable feeling, my heart, blah, 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 blah. By just going, I acknowledge this, I'm at one with this, and then going, right, come on then, let's turn this up. What that actually does is fully accept that the fear is there. Because what happens is that before we're like, oh no, I'm nervous, and we get more nervous and then freak out, because on some level we're not accepting that. We're actually resisting that fear that's there.
Yes.
So if you can actually go, okay, let's increase this then, let's see what you got, bad boy, then that actually completely accepts it, and it's almost like seeing through the illusion, because the fear's almost like, oh shit, okay, he called my bluff. It's really, really powerful. It would take a bit of practice perhaps to kind of have that awareness, but I really recommend practicing it. I've personally done it, and it's really powerful.
Oh yeah, I can absolutely agree. I also tried it, and what the funny thing is, if it's not a big fear, once you're actually challenging it, it goes like down, and you're like, really?
What have we got? Yeah, it's crazy. It's just like, yeah, it's crazy what fully accepting it and embracing it can do. It just changes something. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, okay, very nice. So we come to the last point for today, and that was contribution. How does contribution tie into the whole self-esteem and all we've talked about?
Yeah, well, okay, I'll just talk really briefly on it, because I know we're running over a bit. Essentially, you know, think about in your life when you have given to someone or some people without any desire for something in return, when you've literally just done something nice for someone. Think about when that last time was, and if it wasn't too long ago, you should be able to remember the feeling you had with that nice feeling you had, because I don't know like why it happens or whatever on a scientific level or whatever, but every time it seems that us as humans, we just give selflessly to others, something really deep within resonates, and it just feels right, it just feels good. So I've just found on a purely practical basis, the more that you give, the more that you make it less about you and your own story and your own problems, and like, oh, where am I going to go in life? I've got this problem here, got this, that, and make it more about, so your daily focus being more about, okay, how can I spread a bit of kindness today? So that's the question. I'll write that one. How can I spread some kindness today? If I ask myself that question, which I can do more, to be honest, but I'm doing it more and more as I grow older, I get a lot less anxiety, I get a lot less in my head, I get a lot less negative, and I feel a lot better about myself. And it's a bit of a paradox, because it's not about doing it because you feel better about yourself. It's just like the natural byproduct. But I know people could say, oh, you're just doing it to... No, that's not... You don't want to do it for that reason. You don't want to do it because you're going to feel good. You just will feel good. Just do it because you want to do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just recently I heard someone say, it's not about you. It's about them. You know, if you go into an interaction, if you want to spread kindness, it's not about you. You know, get out of your fucking mind into your life. You know.
Yeah, exactly. We're so self-absorbed, myself included. We're so self-absorbed with our own story that we think everything's about us, and you know, not in a selfish way, just in a bit of a naive way, really. And the more we can focus on a higher cause, if you can attach yourself to more of a higher purpose, I'm not saying you have to be a martyr or something, but to some sort of community or some sort, even just your friendship group, where you give to other people, when you attach yourself to something that, actually, I don't want to use the word attach because that could have some negative connotations, but get involved with a higher cause, your self-esteem will improve. You feel part of something bigger, and you're doing something which is not to do with you and your own problems and your own shortcomings. That makes sense.
Yes, perfect. I think that wraps everything quite nicely up. Would you like to highlight the most important points that we have covered so far? Especially, I mean, I can do it. We can do it together if you want. Or if you have everything already in your head, then go ahead.
I'll just speak from the heart and see what comes out, and you can add to that, like you've been doing really well. So first and foremost, get a clear, or start getting more clarity on what is important to you, and that manifesto of the highest version of yourself. The more you can align your daily actions with that, that is the single most important thing you can start doing to build up your self-esteem. Combined with that, if you have to go back a little bit in the past, go and do some spring cleaning and clean up all the shit, all the stuff you're hanging on to from the past, all the stuff that isn't serving you. Realize on a profound level you are not the past. That is just not you. That's not who you are. You are right now in this moment, and you're constantly changing. So cut the ties with the past, free yourself up to move on, and then start actually cherishing your strengths as well, and embracing your weaknesses at the same time. But start appreciating what you're doing already, right? What love you're bringing already to the world and to yourself. To then start contributing as much as possible. And yeah, I think that's getting vulnerable. Just get vulnerable and face your fears.
Okay, yeah, so I would just add the exercises, or some of the exercises. I don't know if you recall everything, but one very important exercise to find yourself is meditation silence, right? Which we have covered. Our exercises are just go sit down with your notebook. There's the exercise where you actually write down how you live your life, and you can look at it and see how it compares to your core values, to what you really want in your life, what you really value about your life. And just acknowledge it. Again, here, very important. Keep it an attention that is good and not something where you're criticizing yourself, oh my God, I'm a failure, right? The next exercise that we have covered was also writing a letter that was with the self-acceptance to yourself, and to an event, for example, in the past where you did something that you feel, for example, ashamed of, and actually, forgive yourself, or just accept it, accept what has happened there, and also find the strengths in it, right? Find the blessings of those situations. And with anything, with the core and the integrity, being integrity to your core values, always look at baby steps. How can you take the next small steps? Go for successes in any exercise that Sam has shared here. Go for successes. Don't try to play the hero. You can be the hero at the end of the last 1000th step. That's fine, but you're not serving yourself if you go out and you try to do it right away, the biggest step you can ever take, and you don't succeed with it. You're not going to do yourself any good. With some people, that's the approach you go, fine, but I would personally recommend go do the small steps, right? Any other exercises we have shared?
I think you covered the main ones. Just think about the questions that you ask yourself. So the ones we've got written down there, just take a note of them regarding your insecurities. How can you spread more kindness? Your bucket list, things that scare you. What things are you hiding? Start being honest about all of these, and then taking some action.
Okay, so I think that wraps it up. And Florence has already asked a question, and that's perfect because now is the question answer time. So if you have any questions, you can just type it in there, or you can say that you want to be unmuted, and you can actually talk to us. Florence has written to us, do you guys think showing vulnerability is being negative about oneself? Like when we're meeting new people, we always need to sell good things about ourselves to get response. What are your thoughts about that, Sam?
Okay. So yeah, often people have a bit of a issue with showing vulnerability. So what I mean by being vulnerable as well in that sense is not necessarily going to a stranger or to someone and just breaking down and just being like, these are all my weaknesses, this is my vulnerability, this is oh, you know, it's not about going to the other extreme where you're just expressing all your vulnerabilities all the time to everyone. It's about what it is more about, really, is not censoring. It's about not censoring yourself rather than just showing your vulnerabilities for the sake of showing them. No, no, no. It's just about if you're in that conversation and you feel a little bit nervous, for example, it's going to be far better for your self-esteem and for the conversation, actually, for the success of the conversation, to express that and say, do you know what? I feel a little bit nervous at the moment. Just being honest here. Yeah, you actually intimidating me a little bit. Whoa. Whatever. It's about that rather than going, by the way, this is my vulnerability. I'm insecure about this. I'm also insecure about this. It's not about going to that extreme. And then you've put here, we always need to sell good things about ourselves to get a good response. So I personally wouldn't even adopt that mindset. I would come from the place where you don't need to get any good response from the other person. Perhaps you would like a good response. Perhaps, you know, I mean, I think all of us, myself included, I'd love to have good responses in every interaction I have. But there's a big difference between wanting and needing. So I make sure beforehand, before I speak to someone or I give a presentation or something, I make peace in my mind. I say, yeah, I know I'd love a good response. That would be amazing. Like, I'm not going to deny that. But I don't need that. I don't need that to validate me. I don't need that to make me feel good. I'm using my own integrity. I'm using the very fact that I'm taking action, the very fact that I'm going over to speak or to give the talk. That is the gold. That is the positivity I take. Awesome if I can get a good response, but I don't need to sell myself to get a good response. If that makes sense.
Okay. I hope that has clarified. If not, just type in again. And the other people can also just type in, let us know what your questions are. That's the time to pick his brain.
Now's your chance to ask any questions. Jachym can unmute you and you can talk away. Oh, Charlie's come back. Hey, look at that. Just in time for questions.
Yeah. So we'll just give you some minutes, and if there are no questions, then we'll wrap the call up.
No worries, Florence. Come on, someone must have a question. You must have a question. Now's your chance.
Yeah, and it's also
don't waste this chance. Go vulnerability.
Yeah, and it's a chance to actually, you know, ask something about your life where you feel like, oh, I don't really know how to apply some of those tools in my life. Perfect. Go ask questions right here, because if you have the questions, probably someone out there has the same question as you.
So you can contribute to others as well.
Sorry, what?
So you can contribute to others as well.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question for you, mate, while we give them the last few minutes.
Okay.
What have you found most powerful have you come from a place yourself of building up your own self-esteem?
I had a pretty good self-esteem, but it was, I was wrapped up, like when I knew I had to perform, for example, no problem. I just go out, I just do it. But to have it like the self-esteem in everyday life, I've struggled a little bit with that. Like, not if I know I am going to a party, that was okay, but just like going out, expressing myself, for example, on the street. You know? And I wasn't aware of that at first, and just bit by bit I became aware, wait a second, you know, why the hell am I not doing this?
Oh, okay.
So that's where I had struggled with self-esteem, but not necessarily like with other things, like, you know, because I played the cello, I did martial arts, and with that, you always have to perform. I'm teaching now hypnosis, so I have to go out in front of people and do that. That was never an issue for me, but I always had the purpose there. And I have now learned also, you know, if you don't have a purpose, you can just be yourself. And that's very powerful, I think, very liberating.
Yes.
Any questions? Well, as you know, while we're waiting, tell us what are your plans like in the future? Do you have any things coming up?
Oh yeah. Well, Well, the only thing I've got coming up in the very near future is a retreat that I'm doing on the 13th, 14th, 15th of June. There's only one space left at the moment. So this is, woohoo, Charlie's coming. So yeah, one space left. I'm really, really excited about this. It's going to be 3 days away from all the hustle and bustle of the city, and this is to give people the opportunity to get to know themselves better, to get to know who the hell are they, what the hell is important to me, with all this noise and stuff away. Who am I, what's important to me, and start helping them to practice that ability of watching their thoughts. So for those of you who want some more experience in meditation and things like that, and even just relaxing the mind, it's going to be awesome.
All right. There's a new question. If you want, you can read it out. So the people who don't see the chat box, you know, for example, like on YouTube, they know it too. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm told you that... Oh, sorry. 1 sec.
The question.
Bad phone. Quick chat the other day. I told you that I'm doing really well financially and doing the things I've always dreamed about, but socially I'm still struggling. You say I probably have to allow myself to be more vulnerable. How being vulnerable helps being more sociable? How does being more vulnerable help being more sociable? So, okay. Okay.
Okay.
How does being vulnerable help being more sociable? Okay, so, well, because when you're going to communicate with someone and you're closed up, you've got defensive, you've got a mask on, you're scared of being vulnerable, then the interactions are awful. The interactions, well, they might not necessarily be awful, but there's going to be no chance of a connection, which at the end of the day, that's what we all want as humans. There's plenty of people I know, plenty of coaches even I know in the kind of social confidence area that are very, very good conversationalists on a certain level. They can go over, they can wear their mask, they can go, hey, how you doing? They can appear charismatic, they can kind of make someone laugh, they can even have good conversation skills to an extent, but if they are not being vulnerable themselves, if they're not being honest with who they are, with how they're feeling, with what's really going on inside, then there's this block. If you guys think of a time in your life, or just you know, might happen quite often, where you speak to someone, but there's just something a little bit not quite right, or there's a little block there. So you're kind of talking to them, but you're aware, maybe on a subconscious level, you're aware there's just a block there. There's something that's not being open, and it can frustrate you, and ultimately you don't have that connection. So to answer your question, being vulnerable allows the conversation to flow more authentically and thus connect.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree.
Ringing phone.
So, any more questions? If so, just let us know. From my side, I'm actually holding another webinar with Sam Davis next week on Tuesday. And it's going to be all about habits. So how you can build habits and maintain habits. For example, those exercises you have today, and you want to actually implement them in your life and make them a habit. That's a very good thing. If you want to participate in this webinar, feel free. I will advertise it on the meetup group, on my meetup group. I don't know if you would like to be there, do it on your meetup group too, because, but you know, however you want. Yeah. Oh, perfect. Good.
There you go. You got a fan, mate. Watch out.
Yeah. Well, are there any questions? Otherwise, we'll wrap up the call.
Oi. I think that's it. Beautiful.
Perfect.
It will go on your YouTube channel as well, right? This, and then I'll put it onto mine.
Yeah.
Buenísimo.
Well, with that, I wish everyone a happy evening and a life full of self-esteem.
Woo! Yeah. Yeah, we love ourselves. We all love ourselves in a healthy way.
Thank you so much, Sam, for coming on the call and sharing all that.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, genuinely. So yeah, I hope the guys have got something useful.
Yeah, and thank you everyone who actually showed up here also. Perfect.
Beautiful. All right, I'll read this in. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Oof.